Ladies and gentlemen, there are wounds that bleed silently, wounds not carved by the blade of an enemy, but by the hands of those who once cradled you. It is a strange sorrow, isn't it, to be wounded not by strangers, but by your own blood. You expect the world to misunderstand you, but not your mother, not your father, not your brother, your sister, the ones who knew your first words, your laughter, your longings. It is easy in such a moment to wonder, where is love? When those who ought to shield you become the source of your pain, the soul does not simply bruise, it trembles. But let me suggest something both old as the hills and yet freshly whispered into every broken heart. When the walls of your own home begin to crack, there remains a fortress not made with hands. When your family wounds you, God does not merely pity you from a distance. He becomes your shelter, not an idea, not a wishful thought, but a presence, real, alive, near. Now you may ask, how can this invisible shelter possibly console me? Would it not be better if he changed my family, fixed the harsh words, undid the betrayal, rewound time? Ah, but that is the mistake we often make. We look for rescue in reversal. We wish the story had been written differently. But perhaps the author has a higher aim than comfort. Perhaps he aims for glory, not the dazzling kind that demands applause, but the quiet kind that makes the soul whole again, the kind that teaches us how to be loved, perfectly, eternally, even when we have been loved poorly on earth. When your family hurts you, God does not merely replace what they failed to give. He reveals a love they could never have given in the first place. He becomes your father, not one who yells, withdraws, or manipulates, but one who holds justice and mercy in perfect tension. He becomes your brother, not a rival or a stranger, but one who knows rejection firsthand. He becomes your home, not the kind you can lose or run from or be cast out of, but the kind where your name is safe forever. Yes, it is tempting to let bitterness root itself in your soul like a thorny vine, to wear your pain like armor, to mistrust every hand stretched toward you. But that is not freedom. That is not healing. That is just another prison. Instead, there is a still, small voice that says, "Come to me, I know, I see, I was there, I will be enough." In your sorrow, he becomes your song. In your storm, your stronghold. He does not erase the ache of a broken family, but he does something deeper. He redeems it. And in the end, that is the better miracle. So if you are here tonight, carrying the weight of being unloved by those who should have cherished you, do not despair. You are not forsaken. You are not forgotten. You are held. You are seen. And above all, you are loved. Not with a human love that fades and falters, but with the eternal, burning, sheltering love of God. God becomes the perfect refuge when earthly love fails, when the very people meant to nurture and protect you become the source of your deepest pain. The soul enters a kind of wilderness. It is a strange and hollow place to be. The laughter that once filled your home begins to sound like an echo of a memory you're not sure ever belonged to you. The faces that once felt familiar become strangers with familiar names, and the worst part, you feel as though you ought not to feel this way. After all, family is meant to be safe. That's what everyone says. That's what you believed. But what happens when the sanctuary becomes the battlefield? It is here, in the cold aftermath of shattered trust, that many find themselves asking, where do I go now? Who will understand me? Who will see the hurt I cannot even explain? It is a lonely place, but it is not a forsaken one. For there is a shelter, not made with stone or walls, but eternal, living and present. When earthly love collapses, when mother, father, sibling, or spouse fails in the very role they were given, God becomes not just a listener, not just a comfort, but a refuge. He becomes the shelter your soul has been reaching for in every word that should have been spoken and every embrace that never came. This is not mere sentiment. It is not poetic language trying to soften harsh realities. It is truth forged in fire. Many have found, through the ache of rejection, that divine love does not just sit on high and watch from a distance. It descends, it enters the ache, it wraps itself around the wounds and whispers, "I am here. I do not leave, I do not fail." To understand this, you must be willing to let go of the idea that God is like your family. He is not. If your father was angry or absent or harsh, do not project that onto the God who formed you in secret and knows every hair on your head. If your mother was cold or controlling or simply too broken to love you well, do not imagine God to be the same. He is not a mirror of our parents. He is the perfection of what they could never be. God is not an exaggeration of human love. He is its origin. The love we crave, the love we were made for, does not begin with our family. It begins with Him. We often search for shelter in what is familiar. We seek it in people who share our blood, our name, our memories. But sometimes the very structure that was supposed to provide warmth is what leaves us most exposed. It is then that we discover something surprising. Shelter is not always found where we expect, but it is never far away. God is not like a locked door we must find the key to. He is the one who runs to the broken, the weary, the ashamed. He is the one who does not ask you to be cleaned up or emotionally composed before entering His arms. You bring your bruises, your raw honesty, your grief, and you find yourself not judged but held. This shelter is not made of emotional detachment or spiritual escapism. It is made of presence, real, patient, understanding presence. God becomes your shelter not by removing you from pain, but by sitting with you in it. He is not embarrassed by your story. He is not surprised by your scars. In fact, He knows betrayal intimately. He knows what it means to be despised by His own. He knows what it means to love perfectly and be rejected completely. So when you bring Him your pain, He does not look away. He looks right into it and says, "Me too. I know this. Let me carry it with you." There is a kind of safety that does not always look like protection from harm, but the unshakable assurance that you are not alone in the aftermath of harm. That is what God gives. When the voices of your past try to define your worth, when they call you too much or not enough or a disappointment, God speaks louder and with unwavering clarity, "You are mine. I delight in you. I have not left you." Many have tried to build new shelters, careers, relationships, addictions, even silence, but none of these last. They crumble under the weight of our soul's longing. What we need is not distraction from the pain, but a place to bring it. A shelter strong enough to bear the full weight of our story, and God is exactly that. He does not break under your sorrow. He does not retreat from your mess. In fact, He draws nearer. To be sheltered by God is not to be shielded from all suffering. It is to be held within it. It is to find that in the darkest hour, when no one answers your call or notices your tears, there is one who already saw them before they fell. One who understands what your family never seemed to grasp, that your heart matters and your pain is real. He does not love you because you are easy to love. He loves you because it is in His nature to do so. His love is not reactive. It does not wait for you to prove your worth. It surrounds you when you feel worthless. It holds you when others have let go. This is the kind of shelter no human being can offer perfectly, and no family can replicate. It is holy ground. And so, when your family fails you, it is not the end of the story. It may be the beginning of another one where you come to know God not just as Creator, but as Comforter, not just as Judge, but as Defender, not just as Savior, but as Shelter. Divine love heals wounds that family cannot. There are few pains more confusing than being wounded by those who were meant to love you. It leaves a mark that is not just emotional, but deeply spiritual. It strikes at the very root of identity and belonging. You begin to question everything, your worth, your role, even your reality. When love from family becomes conditional, absent, or manipulative, the soul feels disoriented. And it's here, in the ruins of broken relationships, that something unexpected happens. Divine love, the kind that cannot fail, begins to rise, not as a distant doctrine, but as the only truth that holds firm when all others collapse. Divine love does not pretend you haven't been hurt. It doesn't minimize or excuse the behavior of others. It does not ask you to put on a brave face or dress your wounds in spiritual cliches. It begins with truth. God's love meets you where you actually are, not where you pretend to be, not where others expect you to be, but in the exact place where it hurts. In that space of unfiltered grief, divine love speaks a word deeper than the betrayal you've received. It says, "You are still mine, you are still loved, and I do not love you like they did." There is a tenderness in the way God approaches the wounded. He does not rush. He does not force healing before you are ready. His love is patient, not because it is indifferent, but because it is wise. He knows the layers of pain that need to be unraveled carefully, without tearing what is already fragile. Human love often moves too quickly or not at all. It demands understanding, obedience, performance, but divine love has no such requirements. It is not earned. It is not dependent on your emotional state. It does not change when your feelings do. It is constant, unwavering, and secure. Where human love failed, divine love becomes a balm, not a bandage that hides the wound, but a balm that goes deep, cleansing and restoring. It does not erase the past, but it gently rewrites the meaning of it. What once defined you as rejected now becomes the doorway into being fully known. The betrayal that seemed to sever your belonging becomes the space where God steps in and shows you that belonging was never rooted in flawed people. It was always meant to be rooted in Him. We often try to fix our pain by finding someone else to replace the person who hurt us. We look for new friends, new lovers, new communities that might give us what our family could not. And while these can offer moments of comfort, they cannot reach the deepest places. That is because no one else can love you with the kind of love. Your soul was truly made for a love that knows no shadow of turning, no shifting mood, no selfish motive. Divine love does not depend on your behavior. It does not withdraw when you are weak. It remains when everything else leaves. There is a peculiar power in being fully seen and still loved. This is the miracle of God's affection. When others loved a version of you, only when you were quiet, agreeable, successful. God loves the real you. The part that cries in secret, the part that doubts, the part that still wants to believe but isn't sure how. Divine love says, "I see it all and I stay." That kind of security begins to rewire your heart. You begin to breathe again. You begin to trust, not people, not systems, but the one who made you and cannot lie. You see, when your heart has been mishandled by those closest to you, the risk of trusting anyone again feels unbearable. But divine love does not rush you into trust. It simply stays. It stays when you pull away. It stays when you're angry. It stays when you weep over the things that should have been different. It doesn't lecture. It doesn't shame. It simply remains, and in time, that faithful presence begins to repair what human love broke. God's love is not a substitute for the love you lost. It is something entirely different. It is not a copy of what failed. It is the original. Every good thing you ever hoped for in a parent, a sibling, a spouse. Every glimpse of affection, protection, affirmation. These are only echoes of the real thing. And when the echoes fall silent, the original voice still speaks. It calls you beloved, not because you've earned that name, but because it is who you are in His eyes. Divine love reaches into the parts of you that have been shaped by rejection and begins to reshape them with truth. Where shame once lived, dignity takes its place. Where fear ruled, peace begins to settle. Where your heart felt like a burden to others, God calls it a treasure. And when you begin to believe Him, not just intellectually, but in your bones, healing is no longer just a concept. It becomes an experience, a real, living transformation from the inside out. This love is not afraid of your complexity. It's not surprised by your reaction to the pain. Whether you respond with anger, numbness, tears, or silence, God's love is steady. He does not flinch. He does not scold. He listens. He stays. He waits. And in the waiting, He keeps loving. Not with the kind of love that fades with time, but the kind that was present before you were born and will remain long after the wounds have faded. Even in the moments when you cannot feel it, when your pain shouts louder than your prayers, divine love is there, not as a vague comfort, but as the truest thing about your existence. It is not merely that God loves you, though that is true. It is that His love restores what no human hand can reach. It undoes the lies. It rebuilds what was broken. It names you rightly. Pain from family can lead to deeper intimacy with God. There is something profoundly disorienting about being hurt by those who were supposed to be your first experience of love. A family is meant to be the starting place of safety, a place where you are known, protected, encouraged, and shaped. When that structure becomes the source of pain, the world tilts. The soul does not simply grieve, it questions its foundation. Who am I, if even my own cannot love me rightly? What am I worth, if those who knew me best chose to wound me instead of hold me? It is a pain that penetrates deeper than offense. It touches identity. And yet, it is often in this brokenness, this precise collapse of what should have been stable, that something eternal begins to stir. In the quiet moments when you're no longer trying to explain yourself, defend yourself, or even feel anything at all, there is an unexpected invitation. It does not come through thunder or fire, but through silence. It is the invitation to draw near to the one who has always known you as you truly are. It is in the hollowness left by human rejection that the presence of God begins to become real, not theoretical, not distant, but visceral and near. The pain opens a door, not by our will, but by its very force. When family wounds us, we often carry that hurt like a secret. We may go on performing, smiling, succeeding, hoping that what is broken inside can be compensated for externally. But no amount of external affirmation can fully quiet the ache of having been unloved or misunderstood at home. We crave a love that sees past the surface, a love that does not come and go with mood or circumstance. That craving is not a flaw, it is a compass. It points to something beyond human relationships. It points to a deeper love, one that exists not in spite of your brokenness, but within it. God does not meet you at the polished surface of your life. He meets you in the raw places. When your family has made you feel unseen, unheard, or unwanted, He becomes the one who sees you clearly, hears you deeply, and wants you still. There is a quiet kind of intimacy that forms in suffering. It's not glamorous or loud. It's not usually accompanied by fireworks or easy answers, but it's real. It's the kind of closeness that doesn't have to be earned because it already existed before you knew how to ask for it. Pain has a way of softening the places in us that were once hard. It strips away the distractions and illusions. When you are finally too exhausted to keep pretending, there is space for honesty. And that is where God does his best work, not in performance, but in surrender. He does not require you to make sense of your suffering before he meets you in it. He is the one who enters into it with you, who weeps with those who weep, who does not stand far off offering advice, but comes near, sits with you in the dust, and calls your name. In the absence of family love, God does not merely stand in as a substitute. He reveals a different kind of love altogether. It is not merely parental or brotherly in the human sense. It is higher, purer, untouched by ego or selfishness. It is love without agenda, love without manipulation, love without expiration. That kind of love begins to change you, not all at once, but steadily. You begin to realize that your worth is not attached to how well your family treated you. Your identity is not tethered to their affirmation. You were not created to be defined by those who failed to see you. You were created by the one who saw you before you ever took a breath. This realization does not erase the hurt, but it transforms your relationship with it. You are no longer trying to make sense of why they didn't love you the way you needed. You begin instead to marvel at the fact that God does. When your soul has starved for kindness, his voice becomes the food you didn't know you needed. When you've been silenced, his words become your healing. When you've been dismissed or ridiculed, his presence becomes your affirmation. Slowly, what once felt like a devastating loss becomes a doorway into something sacred. To suffer in the realm of family is to suffer where it matters most. It is not a trivial thing, but neither is it the end of your story. Often, the deepest intimacy with God is born in the places of your greatest rejection. When you stop striving to fix what cannot be fixed, and instead allow yourself to be held, a new kind of relationship begins. You begin to see God not just as sovereign, but as near, not just as holy, but as tender. He does not rush you through the pain, he walks with you in it. This intimacy is not born of convenience or ease. It is born of being fully known and still fully loved. In the places where human closeness has failed, divine closeness steps in, not as a replacement, but as the truest fulfillment of what you've always longed for. You stop needing the apology that may never come. You stop waiting for someone to finally see your worth, because you know in your soul that your worth is no longer up for debate. Pain from family does not disqualify you from knowing God deeply. It positions you to experience him more intimately. You are no longer performing for love. You are resting in it. You are no longer afraid of being left. You are already held, and in that holding, your identity begins to be rebuilt, not in the image of those who failed to love you, but in the image of the one who always has.